All right, so we are starting off today with chapter 3. Chapter 4, the last book or the last chapter will be next week. But before we dive in, would anyone like to open us in prayer?
I will. Heavenly Father, we just come before you, and we are so thankful that we get to gather as ministry leaders and discuss how we can apply the things that we are reading in this book into our ministries. And I just ask that you would have your way in our conversation today, and that you would be glorified in everything that we say and everything that we do, and that you would have your way and your will be done, so that way we can go and make a significant kingdom impact on our families and in our communities. And I just pray a special blessing over Jody for coordinating all of this and making it happen, because that takes a lot of time and dedication. And I just ask that you bless her for that and return that time to her that she takes to pour into all of us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks for that. All right, so chapter 3, I think was a doozy of a good chapter. I definitely feel like it's a common struggle that I hear from many different Kidmin leader friends of mine. So I'm very interested to see and hear what y'all have to say. So it's starting with question 1. In your church, is there a gap between congregants' perceived importance of kids ministry and congregants' willingness to be involved in child discipleship? Let me hear from you.
I don't think so in our context. I don't know. I say that we also still do struggle with getting volunteers. But I do think that most of our volunteers are not parents of kids. They are grandparents, and their kids aren't even involved in our ministry, right? Like, so they're the age of grandparents or adult. They have their own adult children that don't have kids yet, but are in college. So I don't think, they realize that children's ministry is important, but that doesn't mean that we have a slew of volunteers either.
I feel like I have a pretty good solid team of volunteers, but when it comes to like congregants outside of parents, I feel like there's somewhat of a disconnect. I think they do understand and value kids ministry, but I think I feel like it's in word only, and not in action, meaning they definitely of their own free will don't come saying, hey, I'd love to volunteer. It's definitely more of asking. And we've changed our approach with asking for volunteers, kind of like the end of this chapter talked about, is sharing our vision and mission of the kids ministry. Because you don't want it to always seem like an ask, because then that's what we all become known as, right? As asking for more help. But I think communicating the vision and mission of our ministry has definitely helped. But there is always a need to have more spots filled, to make things run safely and smoothly. And I always hate asking parents because, a lot of them just like being able to drop off and go. And I feel sometimes the congregation doesn't see how important they really could be, or they are, to be in my ministry. Like, what I mean by that is who they are in our church is super important. They're elders, they're people our kids could look up to, and they have the potential of really influencing a child's life.
I feel like our gap is specifically with male congregants, like the perceived need of father figures versus the actual number of men willing to step up and be part of that child discipleship and take on leadership roles is kind of like one of the major gaps. I think that for the most part, we're a pretty small congregation, and I need pretty much everybody to help out in some capacity for some amount of time. So a lot of the women step up, but it seems like we have a hard time getting men to do that.
In our ministry, we started a celebration team in 2019. And so on the last Sunday of every month, the kids go out and they share what they're learning in kids church and what they love about church. And we give like relationship building questions, but also spiritual based questions for the adults to ask the kids. And that was probably one of the best moves that I've made in my ministry. And so since then, I've got grandparents who have stepped up to be prayer partners in our ministry. So now at the beginning of every month, they get a prayer partner card on ways that they can pray for the kids. I've got people that are actually wanting to partner with families and be that prayer warrior with that family. Specifically, I've got grandparents that have grandkids far away. So they've adopted the kids in our ministry as their own grandkids since starting the celebration team. And actually on Friday, I had a meeting with one of my oldest ladies in our church. And she said, I've been talking to some senior adults and we want to start a ministry to where your kids can ask questions that they have about their faith. And we want to answer those questions. So, and we want to do it on video. We can do it after church. We really don't have a gap at all since starting that celebration team of, we just want to celebrate who God is and what he is doing in the lives of the kids and in the lives of the grownups. And we give the kids like a question to ask the grownups too. But so that was like a groundbreaking, amazing fruit from making that one shift in our ministry that has completely eliminated a generational gap in our church.
I think when I look at our volunteer team and the importance, I think our church recognizes the importance and the need for kids volunteers, and they support everything, but it comes to, for a lot of our volunteers, it comes to, they feel like they're inadequate. So they talk a little bit about that in that survey too, right? So that, I think that's my biggest, the hindrance for us is that a lot of people feel like they're not good enough or qualified enough or capable enough to volunteer. I think that's where our hindrance is. There's definitely support from like leadership across the board for kids ministry and even in our parents. The support for what happens here is there, but the willingness to come alongside and help is not always there. But a lot of that stems from a feeling of I'm not good enough. It's kind of what I get out of conversation from a lot of our volunteers.
I think that that's something that a lot of churches see, right? Is like this not unwillingness, but like, I'm not good enough. And I was thinking about that this morning. And one of the things that I don't know if it was in this book or if it was in something else that I have seen that said that you can circumvent or get away from that is through trainings. But then I'm thinking, okay, like, listen, I do this for a job. I can sit in on a YouTube video. I can do trainings all day long and I can do all of that. But my volunteers all have other jobs,
yeah,
or all have kids, or, like those kinds of things. And so like, my biggest thing is, well, how can I equip my volunteers and respect their time? Because they're not getting paid to come in and do this. And yeah, training would be wonderful, but I can't ask them to commit a complete Wednesday evening plus come in on a Sunday afternoon. Yeah, I don't want to be here on a Sunday afternoon. I want to go home and take a nap.
Yeah.
So if you have any genius ideas on that, other than just like articles that like I can send them, because I do those things too, but do they read them?
Josh Denhart actually has this thing that he calls potty training for grownups. And so it's a 2-minute or less training video that he sends out, and they're pre-made for you. So I don't know what segment they're in, maybe somebody else does. But he actually has the newsletter, the training, everything in 2 minutes or less, so that way parents can do it while they're getting their 2-minute potty break during the day. So I would definitely look into something like that, because Josh Denhart is like spot on amazing in everything that he does.
Anybody else? Any thoughts or feelings on a gap or no gap? All right, then moving on to question 2. Outside the box of parents and guardians, who are some of those within your church who could volunteer children's ministry if they were properly equipped? And maybe you thought of like some specific people, but if there's a grouping of people you would love to see involved in your ministry, who would that be and why?
I would love some of our seniors to come into kids ministry. And like, we don't have like really old seniors at our church. So like when I'm saying seniors, I'm talking like those 65, like that 65 just retired. Like there's not, we don't have a big group of them at our church, but there's such a wealth of knowledge. And the kids, I think, would think it was so cool if some of them came and did kids ministry. That and men. I'm also on team for men. I only have youth boys right now. I have one male preschool teacher. I used to actually have a male teacher in all of my Sunday school classes. That was like a goal that I had to have one, at least one in each class. And I have one in kids church and one in preschool. I would love to have more, because we definitely have some kids that don't have a positive male role model in our church. So it would be great for them to have that, at least somebody. But men and seniors, that's my dream groups.
Your dream team. I think men don't realize how cool they are and how relatable they are. They always feel so awkward with kids, sometimes even their own. I mean, my husband sometimes calls me and says, "Hey, what should I do?" And I'm like, "They're your kids for 7 years. You don't know,
Yeah.
But one of the groups of people I would love to actually see more involved in kids ministry or directly involved, and we've talked about it before, is like my actual pastoral staff. Like we've had our pastor, we've had some elders come and visit our kids ministry. But I would love if they could come more often. Now I know our pastor preaches on Sunday, but there are times he doesn't. And he's, he has walked around, but I think it'd be so cool for him to come and actually, teach our large group or do a small group with one of the kids, with a group of kids on a Sunday. Our executive pastor has helped on Wednesday nights doing teaching then, but I think it'd be cool for them to actually get that hands-on experience. Then they'd be able to tell people from the pulpit how exciting and fun and influential and impactful it was, because it's not just, impactful on kids, it's impactful on us as adults. So I think it'd be cool if pastoral staff would be able to come more often in kids ministry.
Yeah, we had our senior pastor offer to be in our nursery one week, and it was huge. One, he got to see what needed to be done in my space. He's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, you've been talking about this, but I haven't gotten it, it hasn't become a priority." And then being able to tell the rest of my nursery staff, "Hey, guess what? Pastor Travis was in here." And so that spoke volumes to my families and my volunteers. So I'm with you on that, Jody. I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but he also has his own responsibilities. But it was neat that he was willing to offer when he saw the need and knew that he wasn't preaching that Sunday. The other area that we're trying to tap into is we're a college town. And so we've got a large chunk of college students / young adults who have now graduated and kind of stayed in the area. And I'm trying to tap more into them. It means a little bit more turnaround because I usually only get them for a short amount of time. And so trying to figure out my systems of training and discipling them as leaders, and then realizing that they will then leave. But it's been really neat to kind of get to know some of those younger adults.
like you. I would love to have some kind of a connection with our local Christian schools to get a stream of interns coming in, in the summer or the fall or whatever semester. And I'm working on that, but it seems slow going. By the time they get back to me, I'm busy with something else.
Oh, no.
Heather, if you can hear us, we lost you.
Trained. So, oh, look, my internet connection is unstable.
You're back. We hear you.
Okay. Sorry, my internet was like, so yeah, I'm trying to get my young junior hires connected into the ministry, so that when they're of the appropriate age, then they are allowed to serve alone without a parent. So I need to work on that.
And I can't remember if it's this book or some book or the Kids Matter conference. It talked about how important it is plugging in those teens because you're giving them a sense of belonging and participation. And that helps with the rate of kids leaving faith, because if they're not involved or connected, by the time they graduate, what's the point in staying if they don't feel connected? So I think that's awesome that you're doing that.
So we have a really tiny youth group, like 3 kids on a good day. And they're all middle schoolers except for one high school kid who acts like a middle schooler. But they almost all of them have helped in some form or fashion in our children's ministry. And I love it. I hate it, but I love it because middle schoolers are a breed of their own. And but last year I had a 5th grade girl say, oh, I can't wait till next year so I can come back and help in kids club. And then even this morning, my daughter and her friend, while they were waiting for the bus stop, they were talking about what they wanted to do when they grew up. And Abby said, that's my daughter. She said, you know what? I'm just really excited that someday I'll be able to help in kids club as a youth kid. And I thought that's awesome, right? Like, because one, yes, it's helping our older kids want to stay and grow in faith, and hopefully even like leaning into some of those callings that they might have to be in ministry in some form or fashion. But also too, it like the other younger kids see that, look, even a 12-year-old has something of value, and I can someday help, our nursery kids come to know who Jesus is. And I think that's huge.
You guys are inspiring me to ask some of my well, you also have a small youth group, and our church policy that we put in place says that you have to be 13 to be before you can help. But our oldest kids are both boys, but I'm like, maybe 2 birds, 1 stone. I'd get some of these boys to come help. I don't know how they'd handle it. I'm curious to hear what they would say if I asked them if they wanted to help with kids ministry once a month. I kind of think they might like it.
So we use youth a lot in ours. They have to go through our background and all of that stuff, but the boys are awesome. And the kids, it's so impactful for them to be able to see, like, especially our boys, to be like, oh, that's me in a couple of years. And they do really well. I do find that there's some who are really good with, like, I could run a small group and they do really well with that. And there's others who are great with tech. There's some of the best in, honestly, my 2-year-old room of like getting on the floor and playing cars and trucks and getting into the house and like doing all those things. So there's definitely a place for them. And I think it gives them an opportunity to see that they do have a place in kids ministry too. Because one of the big pushbacks I think I get, especially just from some men, is they're just not comfortable in there. So if we can kind of start that young, I feel like we can start to break that down.
We have like I don't know if you call it a larger group, but we have about 60 teens that come on our weekly basis, and we plug so many of them in. And a lot of them that go from 5th grade into 6th grade, they can't wait to then be, the teachers of the classes. They're definitely not leading yet at that young age, but they feel that sense of responsibility and, being important. And I've got kids that can't wait to serve, and they really are good. The boys, they're so good. And oh yeah, we have one boy who's on our teen worship team, and he comes and volunteers once or twice a month. And when he participates doing the motions and singing, let me tell you, all the kids participate in worship on those Sundays because they see a cool teenager singing and doing the hand motions. So another really good benefit.
So one thing that I had done sort of strategically with my grade 5, 6 kind of Sunday school class when I had it, this was before insurance changed all the rules on us, is that our grade 5, 6 Sunday school class, we did like a rotation. So they would actually be in their Sunday school class twice a month. Once a month, they would be volunteering somewhere, and once a month, they would sit in the regular service, so that they were kind of getting ready to transition out of kids ministry and into like a volunteering role, and getting like familiar with what the regular service was like. And so our kids would, like, even the grade 4s and 5s would be like, oh my gosh, they would know, like, or sorry, the grade 3s and 4s would know when they got to that grade 5 class, they were going to get to like volunteer and be involved. And sadly, you have to be 12 now. We used to be able to serve at 11, but our insurance changed it. So it was a big deal for our kids. They knew that was like a rite of passage for them, right? And so they saw those older kids helping out in different areas, and they were excited about it. It was like, and it was very strategic, and it worked because we had a bunch of kids that were kind of lost. That grade 5, 6 group, I always find, because our junior high doesn't start until grade 7, we kind of always lost them, right? And we've kind of lost them now because since COVID, have been doing large group. So I'm hoping in the new year to start something back up for them again, so that it's something similar at least. But it was a huge success, and our kids and the teachers and the parents loved it. So.
Well, I hate to do this, but because I'm doing Zoom call today, it only has 8 minutes left. So let's move on to the next question. How is your church supporting your work-life balance, well-being, and fulfillment of those leading or volunteering in your ministry? How does your church do that for you?
So one struggle that we have as a church is we end up pulling from the same pool. So a lot of my kids volunteers are also youth volunteers, are also helping with all the special projects and all the different things. And they're on the deacon board and they're this. And it's been difficult because we're seeing that burnout piece. So we're trying to figure out how not to do that, but also not lose those volunteers who are super instrumental in keeping our doors open. So that's where we're at. We're not great with it, but we're seeing it and trying to figure out what that next step would be. I
think for myself, and actually a lot of my volunteers are not parents of the kids. They either have adult children, or that I'm single and childless, and I have some other volunteers that are like that too. And I struggle with this, and I this is like a lack of support actually, but I don't have like a default excuse not to do something. And same thing with some of my volunteers, where like if you had kids, you're like, I'm sorry, I can't be there after 8, that's bedtime, or they have a soccer game, or whatever it is. And it's really easy to let myself just get consumed by that, and then do it to my volunteers too.
Hannah, I agree 100%, but I want to say you have permission to say no, even if you are single. I know you might like think those things, whatever, you have permission to say no. And because I think that like I'm in a youth workers group that met on Thursday, and they said the same thing. We're burning out. And even those that do have families and kids, like, yeah, sure, there are our default excuse, but it shouldn't be that. We shouldn't have to come up with an excuse. We shouldn't have to say, yeah, I can't do that because of blah. Nope, I just don't have to do it. And you don't always need an answer. Sometimes yes, but I do think that a lot of churches are running that into that problem, right? Where like you've got the same volunteers doing all of it, like you were saying, Kristen. And so what I try to do is give our volunteers an out for a season. So like in the summer, we don't do midweek programming, and we didn't do children's church. And so those people that were involved in those two things had the option to say no. And most of them came and helped with VBS, or if I needed them to sub for Sunday school or something like that, they would. But giving them the space to rest. And then also recognizing that they have parameters too. Like I'm on the deacon, I'm a deacon, so I can't do this semester, but ask me next week or something like that. I don't know.
I also think it's healthy just to say no. We can't do it all. We just can't. And you don't want to reach that point of like extreme burnout or just giving up. And sometimes by us saying no, other people see the need, because most time their attitude's like, oh, Hannah's got that. Oh, or Jody's got that, or whoever has it. Like they've got it. They've been doing it all along. So, why do they need my help now? And they don't see us in the background, crying or having, explosive meltdown because we just can't. So it is okay to say no. Do it. Say no.
I liked how they said on 67, Cynthia Dixon had talked about that in her like spotlight about it. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say, I just need this for rest. You don't have to have some excuse for anybody. Truly, it comes down to kind of what's best for you. And I love the mindset that by you saying no, it is opening the door for somebody else to jump into this. And sometimes that's when we find like the best person that we never knew was the best person, because they did jump into that role when it was offered. But
I also had somebody mentioned Josh Denhart a minute ago, and I've also been through his coaching. And one of the things that he talks about when we look at retaining volunteers is workload and capacity for workload. And everybody has a certain finite capacity, but it doesn't just include volunteering at church. It includes their whole life, like, coaching soccer, or reading in the kids' classroom, or what's happening with their aging parents or their younger siblings or whatever, right? So, and depending on what all is happening, things stretch and flex like a rubber band, and we just have to be in constant communication with our volunteers. That's one way that I try to support the volunteers, is check in with them and just keep abreast of what is going on in their lives, and then also just recognize when I sit down to do my annual planning, I have no pressure at all to like produce a certain number of events or whatever. I don't put that pressure on myself, and I don't have that from my senior leadership as well. So then I have the freedom to kind of look at the entire church calendar and say, okay, this department is doing this event that is an all church event in September. Therefore, the entire 3 months, August, September, October, I don't have to do anything. I can support that. And then that frees up our families. It frees up our volunteers more, and it keeps me from being on the verge of burnout. I did go through burnout. It like 2020, 2020 was when I kind of crashed and burned. And gratefully, the Lord has healed me from that and brought me out of that into a better, more healthy place of ministry. So if anybody would like to message me or have your own Zoom call with me about like how to get through that, I would love, to help you with that. I'll just throw that out there.
So real quick, I want to continue this conversation at least for like the next 10-15 minutes. So I think how Zoom works, because I'm doing it on my own, we can hop out and hop right back in, right? Anybody familiar with Zoom? Okay, so let's hop out and then hop right back in. All right. So you guys,
If it doesn't work, Jody, I can set up a Zoom call too if we need to.
okay, I'll text you and let you know if it does not
Okay.
work. All right. See you guys in a minute. All right, I think we have everybody back. Oh, hold on, Kristen, Hannah. There we go. Yay, it worked. Welcome back, everybody. All right, so let's continue with the supporting of the work-life balance.
I don't know what was happening before I got here. I'm in my second year here, but one of the ways that I've found that my volunteers love in their support is when they call and say, hey, I can't come tonight because blah. And I say, no, that's fine. And like the first 3 times I did that with volunteers, like they were all like, are you sure? Like you don't need, and I've told them over and over again, right? Like your family, your men, like whatever it is that is wrong going on comes before this. And we can fill in your space, but we can't fill in your space wherever it is that you need. So I think that even just modeling that has been a life changer for our volunteers because they haven't always felt, and I think that this comes because of the generational thing. They're all older, right? When in the older generation, you just pushed through when you were sick, but no, it's okay to take a brain day. And so allowing them that space has been life-changing for them as well. And it's helped us keep them coming back month after month.
One thing my pastor did for me one time is after VBS, it was one of those really hard, crazy VBSs. I mean, when isn't VBS hard and crazy? But we ended on a Friday. Sunday, we were having a kids' Sunday at church. And I mean, that's when we take over the whole service. We do the worship. I do a teaching, which I hate talking in front of large groups of adults. It's anxiety for me. So I was so frazzled by the end of service. And he came up to me and he goes, Jody, I want you to take the next 2 days off. He's like, I want you to shut off your computer. Don't open it, keep your phone. And I was so appreciative of that. My pastor went out of his way and told me, he's like, I don't want to see an email from you. I don't want to see nothing from you. I don't see you at the church. He's like, I want you to stay home. And that meant the world to me that, he saw me in my struggle. He saw, everything we had done and just told me to take some time for myself. And that truly meant a lot to me. I felt seen, and heard without having to say a thing. So that was really awesome.
My pastor's the same way. Jackie, take some time off. But my pastor's also really good at recognizing gifts in other people. And his favorite thing about being a pastor, he says all the time, is being able to push other people forward in their gifts. And so he really challenges all of us in leadership to take Ryan Frank, who's always do what only you can do and delegate everything else. And so our church actually has delegation buckets. And so, and they're designated by time increment. So this is a 5-minute task, 10, 15, 20, and you can't go over 20 minutes. And so if I have crafts that need to be cut out, or if I need somebody to go shopping or whatever, I can put it in the delegation bucket with this. Remember back when we had went to the library for school and they take out the card and do the date or whatever on it. It's basically one of those with somebody's name, phone number, what the task is, and the due date on it. So then that way we know, okay, this is who's doing it. This is when it needs to be back. So that way we can continue to follow up and make sure that we get what we need done. But that has been probably a huge time saver just for me, because now I only have to focus on what only I can do and not worry about anything else. And all of us have a term limit. So every 3 months we have to go through an evaluation, and they talk to us, our senior pastor talks to us about, where are you at in your life? What do you have going on in your life? What's, do you need a break? Do you need this? Do you need that? How can we support you? How can we push you forward? How, so that my pastor just kind of above and beyond, over the top. I tell them all the time, this is the best church ever that I've ever been able to serve in. So, and I do the same for my volunteers too. You have a 3-month term, and every 3 months we're going to sit down and we're going to evaluate what, if you have a vacation coming up, I'm not going to schedule you anywhere near that vocation because I want to honor that. So those are two things that our church does to support me and other ministry leaders when it comes to balancing, because balance isn't real. I'm convinced.
Similar to Jackie, we're kind of working on this concept of having we call them teams as opposed to volunteers, our teams taking more ownership, which is hard for me, honestly. I'm over birth to 5th grade, and I'm the only one on staff doing that, being a smaller church. And so I'm just kind of been used to doing everything myself. And so this concept of trying to delegate and get other people to come in and do things has been challenging, but I like the way one of our pastors has phrased it similar. I don't remember who said it. Someone said something about giving others the opportunity and letting them see where they can strive. And so we're actually having like a volunteer recruitment day in a few weeks. And so a bunch of us got together and we were like, how do we don't want that basic pool to say, oh, well, I guess I can volunteer in another place other than where I already am. We wanted we named them Joe and Sally, the Joe and Sally who don't volunteer anywhere. And we're kind of, what we're using is we're saying, okay, we're going to focus on people's strengths. If you have a strength of graphic design, where can you be plugged into the church? Because someone with a graphic design may not realize that strength of theirs can be used in the church. And so, yeah, that's kind of the direction we're going. And that's been super difficult, but very good for me, because I attempted to be gone 2 Sundays ago. And it was a disaster, like an absolute disaster. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And, but it was, in some ways it was really good because it led to the pastor and our senior pastor, getting together and being like, so what happened? Why did this happen? This is not okay. You should be able to, I should be able to be gone for a week and not be super anxious about stuff and be fielding phone calls. I attempted to go to another church service for the first time in like 3 years. And I had to field 3 phone calls during service, and he's like, that's not okay. You need to be able to be gone. And so I do feel supported. For us, it's a systems thing. But I feel like we are getting there, but a lot of it is just my team being able to take ownership, where it's not just, oh, Tara's the only one that solves the problems. If she's not there, she can't solve, like, we don't know what to do. It's, them taking ownership. And then I feel like we don't have the burnout issue as much when they're taking ownership, because they're enjoying more what they're doing too.
Mm-hmm.
I was really encouraged recently when I'm reading through the Bible. I started in the middle. Anyways, in Exodus 18, Moses is doing everything, and his father-in-law comes and visits him and is like, what are you doing? This is not right. You have to give over. You have to set up some other people to take charge of this. And I just was like, okay, that is right. And it's been an issue for leaders in the church since Moses is kind of the beginning of when they start setting up any leaders in the church. And it is an issue that needs to be we need to give other people opportunities, and we need to not be doing everything on our own.
I think some of it too, though, is our ability to fix things really well. I know, I hear Tara when you're like, I went away and we had a retreat week with pastors from all over Saskatchewan and Alberta, and we met in Banff, which is beautiful. And I was like, okay, I actually left my laptop at home. I was like, I'm not even going to try because it's supposed to be retreat. And this is the week that everything just blew up, and I was trying not to check emails on my phone. And then I'm like, I'm getting one that's really long. And oh my goodness, it turned out that all my volunteers, except for one, had been gone on Wednesday night, and she didn't know the kids and she wasn't strong. It all blew up. And one of the things though that I'm learning is not just to rely on my team members. So that's my volunteer people, but I've also looked at certain areas of my ministry and been like, okay, who else can know how to do this that's not a KidMin volunteer? So our hosting team knows how to do the kids check-in, so that if I'm not there or I'm late, or I live in Saskatchewan right now, my kids are stuck in another town because I can't go pick them up. We just had a storm, and so any day we could get storm stuck. And so to know that not just my team volunteers, but the hosting team or the youth intern or XYZ, they know how to do this as well. Because then when you're not there and your well-known team member's not there, well, hey, someone else in the church or 10 other people in the church know how to turn it on. I found that to be really helpful. And it's been really good when things head south and they're like, oh no, I checked with like so-and-so and they totally knew what to do. And you're like, okay, we got this. So I don't know, I found that to be very helpful. I find for myself though, I love, Jackie, I love that idea of the buckets. I'm just like, oh, I wonder if we can bring that into our church. But I have a really hard time taking the time, even though like our pastor's really good at being like, if you need a day off, like just let me know, like go sit in Tim Hortons if that's what you need to do. For me to de-stress is to sit in a crowded place where nobody needs anything from me. So Tim's, Starbucks, the works. But I find that I won't go unless someone is like, you have to go to that place. Like you have to take the day off. You have to use up this time. Like you don't get to, because I don't know, I am a control freak a little bit. And I find that to be the biggest struggle when things are really bad. I'm like, no, I need to hold on to more stuff. And I need someone to be like I neared my first year, I pretty much burnt out because I had no one being like, you're unhealthy and looking back. But yeah, I find that I really struggle, but that being able to delegate things to people who aren't a part of your ministry, they're also more willing when you're like, can you just be the catch-all if I'm gone and the tech stops working and they can come to you, even though you don't do anything in kids ministry. If I just tell you how to do this, can you? It helps. So
it's interesting. I had in one of my HR courses that I took eons ago, they had made a comment that has always stuck with me. And it's like evidence of a true good leader is how well something runs when you're not there. And I remember looking at it, I was like, oh, shoot. Okay. Like I need to think this through because I'm constantly kind of putting it on myself. So I've been actively trying to like seek up and build up that person next to me. Like who is going to take over my position? I'm not going to have it forever. Am I building up that person? Do I even have structures in place that if something did happen to me, they could step in? And it was one of those like a hard truth. I was like, okay, yep, let's focus on that then. So, but I know how difficult it can be to hand that over, especially if you're type A like I am, and I like it my way. And I kind of want it like that. So
So guilty here.
yes, learning to let go.
Our worship pastor and I just had this conversation a couple weeks ago. I told him that I always view myself as working myself out of the job. I should always have people, right? Like that, because one, I've been on maternity leave twice for my kids, and our ministry the ministry at the church had to run it on its own for whatever, 8 weeks. And then last year, my family and I got COVID during the big Christmas event that we had planned. And I was like, I did not have the brain power to really do anything. And they went and they ran with it. And they said, oh, well, this is not what Jessica had originally planned, but this is what we're going to do. And it worked, and it worked well. And none of the families that came knew that I was gone. And so that was awesome. Something else that I just, I knew I haven't done, I'm not really good at this, is for our own selves, block planning our days. So, right, like you have like your 3 sections, morning, afternoon, evening, and making sure that there's only, a friend of mine just said this on Thursday, making sure that there's only 3 things in each of those blocks. So if you're going to a game on Wednesday night, I don't know why you'd go on a game on Wednesday night, that's our program night, but still, then make sure that you're taking Thursday morning off, right? Like something like that. And so I work very hard to make Thursdays my balcony day so that I can step back from our ministry and look overview, right? Like what's working, what's not working, where do I want us to be in a year, and how can I take those steps there? So I also think that like scheduling our days like that, but then also scheduling our weeks so that you have a sacred space to do the long-term planning. It doesn't always work nicely and prettily, but at least the intention's there.
Will you explain this block scheduling thing one more time?
Okay, so it works. I don't know how your brain works. There's one friend that did it like hour by hour, and I can't do that. And it was color coded, and it was just too much. But I can do something more like I have my office days are Monday to Thursday. And on Mondays at 1:30, we have staff meeting. And on Wednesday night, I have children's ministry and youth group. And on Sunday mornings, I have worship. Like, these are my non-negotiables. And so within that scheduled time, my non-negotiables, I then would divide what are the things that I should get done, I need to get done, and then how can I adjust my schedule, right? So your Mondays, 3 blocks: morning, afternoon, evening. And so in the mornings, maybe Monday morning, I'm reading emails, responding to things that happened on Sunday that I need to get to, and curriculum planning. And then on Monday afternoons, I'm spending 2 hours in meetings, 3 hours in meetings, including this one. And that means that in the evenings, I'm going to take that time off. And then on Tuesdays, I'm going to do the same thing, right? Like, okay, well, there could be, for me, I do youth ministry. There's a game Tuesday night that I'm going to go to, which means that then I'm going to take out chunks of one of my days, right? Like a space, so that I'm not working all the time. But it just gives you structure in what can sometimes be an unstructured environment. Does that help? You can Google it too and find stuff out there. I think DeVries, Sustainable Youth Ministry, I think he's the one that came up with it. Ministry Architects probably has a blank thing that you can find on their website.
Ministry Architects. And what was the name of the person?
Let me look.
Brian Franks has something, he brought it up in one of the things at the conference. And it's specifically about that, like how to make the most out of your day. And he talks very much about blocking that off. And one of the things I've actually started utilizing is he's like, don't open your email when you go in. He was like, when you open your email, you're now on other people's programming and structures and to-do lists. Put it off, do the things that you think are most important, and then open your email, because then you're getting done what you need to be done. So it was all about like that productivity piece of your day.
Mark DeVries.
Mark, spell the last name.
DeVries. He did. So this is Sustainable Youth Ministry. He's also the guy that made Ministry Architects, but he also has a Sustainable Children's Ministry book. So good stuff.
So what Kristen was talking about, it's his Eat the Frog First book.
Okay, I'd
And
see
the very first thing is do the important things first. So it's on my to-do read book, but
Yeah, I know one of you guys said that you guys had the to go. That was one of his whole talks, was like productivity and in that piece. So it was a good one.
all right, we need to move on to one more question, then we're going to be at the end here. Of course, we're coming up on 2:00 Eastern Standard Time, at least. And I really wanted to hear from you guys. This question is, what cultural or community influences most shape the kids in your church? And where would you place your children's ministry influence by comparison?
I differ very much from our parents, and I think that our parents give them way too much unsupervised access to their phones and TikTok and things like that have a huge influence on kids. And I feel like in comparison, I have very little influence.
Social media is my number one as like the biggest influence on kids. Now that's more older than younger, but I think school friends and social media are a huge influence with kids in our church.
We also have a lot of our kids, this is like a differing opinion, and I'm not always sure how far I should go, because a lot of our parents are like the kind of parents who are like, if a kid hits you, you should hit him back, and like that is like their first instinct. That's not my first instinct. I'm like, come tell me first, let's deal with this, let's put violence pretty much last on our list of things that we're going to do. But they also send their kids to home daycares where the home daycare teacher is more in that place than I am. And that's another influence that I struggle with.
I think for me, friends are very, very influential in all of the kids, in the sense of like the things that they're bringing in. So a lot of kids in our society have their phones, and even though maybe that's not a value of families, I think that the friends and the media that they bring with them are influencing. And then in terms of kids ministry, I think it depends on the kid, really. When I hit my lows and I'm like, I don't think I'm doing anything, like we're not making a difference. Suddenly I have a conversation with a parent who's like, my kid was really stressed out. They were having just a crappy day at school. And I was like, you know what? We don't need to go to Wednesday night. Like, let's just stay home. We'll calm down. And they were like, no, that's the one place I feel like I get to be myself. And I thought, okay, maybe we have a bigger, influence than what I thought in terms of the culture that we're creating there. And so I think that when we can foster good relationships and friendships, because if friends are the key player, when they make friends at church, then I think we have more influence than, because it speaks louder. I don't know, they feel like they belong, so they feel more involved and more like they want to do what we're doing, as opposed to just sitting there and being passive participants. So I think I have a bit of an influence, not as strong as the media pull from friends and everything, but up there, at least I hope.
I think that's when I think it was this chapter it talked about like where was it? Like we feel siloed as from a broader set of influences kids have, like we're just on our own and we don't hear like the positive things we do. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense? Like we are like completely separate and we don't get to see or hear normally a lot of what we do, how it impacts kids or not.
I also think that it differs based on the difference between what influence my ministry has and the influence that I have. Like when I think about what influence do I have, I feel I have very little compared to even my volunteers who are serving every week. Some of those volunteers, some of my youth volunteers are such a high influence in the kids' lives and terms of who they want to be like and all of that I feel like as a kidmin person, I don't have that much influence, but my volunteers and the programming has more, if that makes sense.
I think we have a bunch of public school kids and we're in a city. And so I think that our school systems and obviously that's where they spend most of their days, right? They have a huge influence. And just speaking to a few of our families, and that in itself is scary for them. But they can't really send their kids to a private school. They can't homeschool either. So yeah, I think that that's a huge influence on their lives. And I don't know. Yeah. I would hope that we're having as equal of an influence on their lives, but I don't know if we are right now.
Sorry, I just had somebody walk into my office and make a comment, so please don't think I'm laughing at you. I'm laughing at somebody else. I will say I kind of resonate with Kristen. Where'd she go? Did she get booted out?
Yeah, she just posted in the chat. She was hoping to pick up her kids.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I kind of like feel the same way. I feel like I don't have as much influence on my kids as my small group leaders do. But at the same time, since our current fifth graders moved up to the bridge class, they have their own class on the opposite side of the building. They've come to me several times and they're just like, Miss Jody, I miss you. I wish I could be in worship. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. I don't think I have as much influence, but moments like that are kind of like my assurity moments that maybe I do. I don't see it directly, but in that moment I did. But yeah.
One thing Sorry.
ahead. No, go
One
ahead.
thing I do is, so I think that we often forget how much influence we do have, or how much influence, not we, but our church has, right? So I've got this affirmation folder that has followed me from all of the ministry places that I've been. So when a parent emails me something good, or when they send me a text message of something good, or a kid gives me a card, or they color me a picture, I put that in that folder so that when I'm feeling crummy or burned out, or like I don't do anything good, I have no influence, I pull that out, and I'm reminded at how much impact, not even I have, but how much like the little things that I do are important. Because I think a lot of times we get pretty discouraged, and it's fun to just reminisce and be re-encouraged.
That's why I also have this. These are all my notes and cards and pictures of things that kids have made me over the past like couple years. And definitely like when I'm having a downer of a day, I'm like, nope, just look.
I also have a bucket that sits under my desk. It looks really big because it's an IKEA shelf, and I just had to have the matching blue box, but it has like 12 years of ministry, like thank you notes, pictures. This is my personal favorite, like highlights. We did like a trolls thing. This is like my troll hair. So I just have like some special things, like right now my name tag from MegaCon is on my computer screen, but like things like that will go in here. And so as a reminder of not just the things that the kids have given me, but some of the events and some of the cool experiences that I've had. I also have like artwork and paraphernalia from like all my missions trips, and just like surrounding my office, so that when I'm like same thing, when I'm having that day where I'm like, I'm done, I just look at all the things and I'm like, you've done some pretty amazing things. God has really given you lots of opportunities. So I'm with you. I do the same thing. And I tell people to do the same thing all the time. Keep those notes, keep the pictures that kids draw you. Even my kids, even my volunteers, not just like people who are on staff. I tell my volunteers, keep that stuff, because down the road, you never know when you're going to need that reminder. So
I think we are our biggest critics.
Yeah.
And Satan loves to use that against us, and any way he can, he will. So but we're gonna wrap up for today because it's almost 10 after. I appreciate you guys sharing your time with me and your thoughts and suggestions. I always gain. I know I say it every week, and I show you my book every week, but I take so many good notes from you guys, and I love it. Now next week is the last chapter 4. And then the week after that, which will be the first week in November, I think, or second week in November, we are going to have our meet with Matt Markle. I think that's his last name. Are you guys good to meet on Halloween? Everyone schedule wise okay to meet that afternoon? Okay. So that'll be November 7th is when we meet the author. Mark, whatever, from Barna. Yeah. I'm totally blanking on his name right now. But what's that?
Did
Yes.
you get that confirmed with him, or do you need me to do that?
Nope, already did.
Okay.
Yep, it's all set. So anybody want to close us in prayer today?
All right, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you. We thank you so much for your son, Jesus, we praise you because you're creator of the universe and you've created us for your glory. You've given us a purpose. You've given us hope because of your son, Jesus. You've given us a future. And Lord, I pray that you would help us to find those monuments, Lord, to how you're working in our ministries, whether it's a note, a picture, a name tag, something, Lord, that will encourage us and remind us of how worthy you are, God. And I pray, Lord, that you would help us to look at our congregation with your eyes and with your wisdom to know who we can include in this great planting effort in the next generation. And I pray, Lord, that you would give us those faithful volunteers, help us to be good stewards of ourselves and of them, Lord, so that there would be longevity in the ministry. And I just pray for each one of these ladies, Lord, that you would multiply their time this week and help them to walk in your spirit, Lord. Help me to walk in your spirit as we go throughout our week, and that we would be sensitive to what you want us to focus on each day. And we ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Heather. All right, guys. So next week, 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we will hit chapter 4. Sound good? Awesome. Have a great day.